first thing I want to ask you, you were a trainer
I was a head trainer
when Rex was coach.
when Rex was coach.
Tell me about Rex, the coach. I mean, you got to see him for a couple of years.
Intense guy. Intense guy. We had hard practices. And he went through a horrible stretch there for those first 2 years, going 1-11.
Yeah.
And then the third year started with a great win against Ole Miss. You know, the stadium had just been redone. The fireworks are going off. That great picture that was taken of him being carried off the field by the players. Then we kind of hit a snag. And then we were playing Southern Mississippi right before our open date and really not playing well. And in the fourth quarter of that game, we ran back a punt for a touchdown and then got hot and almost won the game. We had a week off. And then we went through a series at Vanderbilt, at Mississippi State, at Cincinnati. I mean, we played homecoming games all 3 weeks. We saw more parachute drops than the Germans did at Normandy the night before the invasion. I mean, we saw parachutes, and we won all 3. And got hot and really played well, and you know, ended up with a win up at Louisville on a Thanksgiving night, and everything was going great. And then a few weeks later, the tragedy happens, and it took the wind out of everything.
That's the thing that I keep hearing, is that this momentum that was being built, that again, when that hit, it just kind of stopped.
It did, and you know, there'll always be debate about whether the next person was the right move or not, or the next person after that. But there was just so much momentum, and this town was so football hungry. And like I said, we were beating SEC schools, and just really things were going well. And it looked like we were getting ready to turn the corner, and then this happened, and it just, again, it just stopped everything.
You talk about the day, because you know you're here, and you know he's leaving to go on a trip to Middle Tennessee. I mean, you know he's going to take a trip. So how did the day develop?
Well, it just a regular old day. You know, I can remember a couple of days prior to that, standing out back of the building and running into him, and he just looks at me and says, "We ended up pretty good, didn't we?" You know, it turned out to be, and it was fun. It was fun. That day was just a normal day. I mean, you know, I was at basketball. At that particular point in time, my wife was running the women's complex, so I lived over in Rawls Hall and sitting there, and one of my former student trainers called and said, "I just heard a rumor Rex Dockery got killed in a plane crash." And I said, "Oh my God." And I came over to the office, and it was already starting to bustle over here, and went straight to Mr. Cabanero's office, and I, with a couple other people, manned phones and said some things like that. But it was a crazy night. I mean, all the media over here, and you know, some of the kids coming in just totally lost, and you know, and having to talk with them and sit down and, you know, kind of just love them a little bit.
As far as Rex the person, I mean, you saw him as a coach, he related to the players, but I related to his coaches. I mean, just the atmosphere with that staff, it must have been unique, a pretty tight one.
It was on that third year there, he'd made some changes. Jimmy Sharp came in, who I thought did as much for helping this turnaround as anybody, because he brought this energy, and he'd been head coach at Virginia Tech, and I remember he put in County Fair at the first of 2 days, which was a circuit training thing, and it turned out to be a big game, and it turned out to be fun for all of them, you know, and we made it fun, and you know, the staff was very tight. We had a bunch of good coaches. I still see some of them every once in a while. You know, it was just good time.